Hi everyone, we're going over custom autofill and fundamentals of drop-down list. It is important to go over custom autofill first because that gives you a little basis of what we are talking about when we get to fundamentals of a drop-down list. Let's take a look at the outline for today. Um, First, I want to give you a little fun things to have in Excel, so as a bonus.
1. Costume fill. 2. Drop-down list fundamentals. 3. Dynamic drop-down list. 4. Conditional formatting with drop-down list. 5. XLOOKUP with drop-down list. 6. Multi-level dependent drop-down lists. 7. Searchable drop-down lists.
Yes, Microsoft Excel can give you sound and speech on here. Um, I will go over that one in a second. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over custom fill and drop-down list fundamentals, and also dynamic drop-down list. The rest of them we're going to have another session. You're asking how did I make Excel to speak? If you go to two commands in here, I put in, if you go to your custom quick access, followed by more commands, and then select commands that not in a ribbon, and scroll all the way down to speak cell, stop speaking cell. Click on each one, click on an add, it will add to your quick access toolbar, and then click OK. What happened is you have those things in here. You have to select your cells, and then you click on speak cell so you can actually hear what you said. Anyway, that was the fun part of the Excel. Now let's go back to our list and then work with custom fill. Custom fill is actually really important. Let's say you are planning to just create your counties, and I live in New Jersey. We have 21 counties, and if I'm using that one constantly in my spreadsheet, it's hard all the time to copy and paste them or just type. It's much easier to create them as a list someplace, and then we always can use it anytime we wish, not necessarily copy and paste. For example, on my list, the top portion of my list starts with Atlantic, top the first portion of the list, and then copy this one all the way down until I get to Warren, and it's automatically all the names of the counties for me. How did I create this? It's very simple. If you go to your file, then go to your options, go to advanced on the left hand side, and then scroll all the way down to edit custom list. In edit custom list, I entered all of my counties names right in here, and then click on add, and that was it. If you know your list may change from time to time, if I may suggest, the best thing is that you import your list into here by creating another tab on your spreadsheet as your references. And let's say in here, go to create your counties right there. And the next thing, go back to your file, options again, advanced, go all the way down to edit custom list. And in here, now you can actually click on source here. You can click in here, select your list, press enter, and click on import, and that list will come up under your new list. I already have that one in here, so I'm not going to be able to just bring them in, but if I didn't, the list will show up automatically in here for you. And when I click OK, then the list will shows up. And anytime your list is changes, you can always go ahead and make your changes right here rather than going directly to your autofill. It makes life 10 times easier. I also do have a bunch of things set up for my purposes. For months, I can have either type in the month JAN and then go across, or I could have just type in January and go across. I create these lists already. So it makes life 10 times easier as I create my spreadsheet, something that is constantly repeated. You really don't want this thing to be typed every single time. Let the machine do the job for you. Make your life 10 times easier to do. All right, let's go to fundamentals of drop-down list. Assuming I have the spreadsheet, it has the projects A through D and the start date for this project. We want to assign them to the departments and the status. The department's static, you don't have to do much with it, but it may change from time to time. Status, more than likely, it is always pretty much the same. No change is going to happen. But how do we create a drop-down list? You can go ahead and click on the cell itself that you wanted the drop-down list to show up, followed by going to Data, then go to Data Validation, select Data Validation. On your Allow area, under the Settings, click on List. Now you can actually go ahead, either type ITO, Finance, Purchasing, let's say Courts, let's say Tax Court, and others. When you click on OK, what happened in this case, it creates a little down arrow key, and you click on that one, you see all the things that you already put in. Make sure when you put those names in, followed by a comma, otherwise it will not going to accept it. And this is the simplest way to create drop-down lists for consistency purposes, so the users won't make a mistake. This is good, but what happens if the list has to change all the time? And if that happens, the only thing you gotta do, you have to go back to your validation again, the way that you set up data list, and then make it changes. Let's say we want to change tax court to Supreme Court, and you press OK, and when you click on here, it's automatically changed. But it is a little bit too much of it clicks to get to changing things. Usually the recommendation is that you create your lists someplace else in a spreadsheet. You're creating let's say you create a data departments in here, and under departments you put all the departments that you are interested, and then go back to your drop down list, because that's you created once. You go click in here, go to data validation, and instead of typing them in, you just select the data by going to where the data actually resides. And in here, I'm going to select the range in here, enter, and then OK. And now if I take a look at my drop-down list, is now I have all my lists showing up right here. Now let's create the same thing for the status. You go back to data validation, list again, your source, references, and project status is sitting right here. Press enter, OK, and now I have project status sitting here. Now, since I already created these things, I can go right ahead, click and drag all those things down here, and guess what happens? Automatically, I have drop-down list for every single one of the cells that I'm interested to have. If I had something like this, let's say I selected these, and then I highlight them and click and drag them, it will bring the items with them. And in order for you to just delete the items, what you should do, highlight and then press delete key. It would be easier when you create it, if they're empty, it's much simpler to just copy cells, so you don't have to worry about deleting them anymore. Now, what happened if you already created all these things, but you wanted to make the better user experience for your users? So whenever they're creating drop-down lists, they should have some kind of a messages. Microsoft fortunately allows you to create these things by going back to your data validation, and then for input message, let's say you are interested to say what to select. So I'm putting my title, then a message for them in here, and then I'll just say okay. Guess what? Now every time I go into my drop-down list, I get what to select, and then I give my message directly to them. It makes the life a little bit easier for your users. What happens if they type something incorrectly? Let's say the department was sales. Microsoft will give them this sales department that you put in doesn't exist in our what you want to do. You want to retry it, you want to cancel it, you need help for that one. Okay. I don't like that generic message. If I want to go back, I have to go to data validation again, and under my error, I can actually write down any type of things I want to. And what is the error message will say. It is entirely up to you, and you can control that one by yourself. By the way, the style of the error can be either stop, warning, and informational. If it is stopped, it will just what you just saw. It will hold them, and you won't allow them to go forward from that point on and until they satisfy what you just put in. Your warning is can give you the warning and allows you to go forward, and you can write down your titles and message whatever way you want, and then still allow them to go. There's another one also informational. It doesn't care. It gives you the information, but it allows them just move forward anyway, regardless. Okay. So in your data validation, it's a good idea to always put your inputs, make sure your error alerts are in good order. So exactly what's all right. What happens now if we wanted to edit these things? Let's say if I want to add something to the dropdown. Apparently, I want to add another department to this one. See what happens to it. So if I go back to references, again, if I add a reference in this case, let's say I add OMAS as our department. Okay. I added them as like going back to my drop-down list. I'm looking at it. It doesn't show up. It is not dynamic. So there's a problem with this. How can we fix this thing? There are two methods to do this. One of them is a dynamic drop-down list. When you go to your reference, you can go ahead and click on one of the cells and turn your department into a table by selecting Insert, Table. It will recognize the fact that you have all of these things sitting from beginning to end. Yes, my table has a header. That's okay. That's fine. Click on OK. Now my table is actually set. Now, if I go back to my drop-down list, I have to make changes in my drop-down list. I go back to my data, data validation, go back to my settings. Now, instead of my source showing the range in here, I will select my table. When I created this, I came across with something called table 3, which it created a table for me. I will give the source to table 3. Okay. But the Excel doesn't accept the table itself, even though it recognizes it, but it doesn't allow you to just work with it under validation like that. There is a one way to do this, and that is using an indirect function, and then quotation mark, the name of the tables, and then click on OK. Now I have my department showing up, and as you notice, the OMAS is already in. It's automatically in. Now, what happens if I change my reference? I add another one. Let's say I add ISP in here. Okay, it's part of my table. I go back to my drop-down fundamentals. In this case, I go down, and ISP is already here. So very good. Everything works out perfectly fine the way that we wanted, and this is great. And this is really cool. So I get this dynamic list going. The only problem is what happened if I go back and I actually delete something from my list. If I just click on delete, now I have an extra cell sitting right here. And if I go back to my drop-down list, I can see an empty spaces. That doesn't work the way I want it. I really want to have a true dynamic list. The suggestion usually is, of course, you can fix that one by just deleting it. Someone may suggest you could have right mouse click on that one and then select delete the row, and that would take care of the whole thing. If I would have deleted the row, that would be taking the same thing. But there's another way also to do this, and that is offset. I suggest you learn about this function. It is a very interesting function. Or if the second solution, and we're going to use a formula called offset. Is so dynamically we can actually figure out what we're going to put in here. So why don't we just use the formula offset? Is looking for the reference range in this case. Just have to press the first cell in your range. For rows and columns, we are not interested in any one of them, so we are going to omit those things, and the height and width count the number of cells that actually have records in it. So I'm just going to use count A. And what I'm looking is the entire list in this case. You're selecting the first one and then all the way to I100. Of course, I'm just going to use absolute values to make more sense to do it that way. Close parentheses and close parentheses. We should be okay. Now it's showing as all of our information. So let's say if I add a new department, creating OAE, is automatically showing up. If I just take the OAE and all the way to ITO out, is showing up. So our formula actually works really well for offset. We can copy this formula and go to our drop-down list, and instead of having this list in here, list, select my list, go to data, go to data validations, write down offset. Our reference table would be in reference from here to CPF, comma. We no longer need our columns and our rows and columns. Then we said we're going to do accounts A, and we have to just say reference A2 to A100, close parenthesis for count A, close parenthesis for reference, for offset, enter, and apply these changes to all same settings, and okay. Okay. Now, if I go down, I have it up to CPF. If I go back into references, I add, let's say, OAE, BAR, BAC. These are all departments. If I add all these things, now we can actually go back and take a look and see what happens. And here they are. Very well. So we have this thing worked out perfectly fine for us. And I hope that you like this dynamic drop-down list. Hopefully in the next session we will follow our other items like conditional formatting, XLOOKUP, multi-level dependent drop-down list, and searchable drop-down list. Hopefully that will complete our session regarding to drop-down list. Thank you.